How are you lovely people doing today? My name is John. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. In this series, I take your questions about the zombie storyline and I answer them. Whether it's a big, a small, or a simple question, I'm more than happy to answer it. So go ahead, leave your questions down below. Maybe I'll see it and maybe I'll answer it. You may even be in the next episode. Another thing you can do is tweet me at JohnnyJ25 with your questions. I'm always on Twitter and it's one of the best ways to get in touch with me. And while you're at it, maybe give me a follow. Without further ado though, let's get rocking and rolling with today's episode. We're gonna kick things off with a question from Stephen Milan, who asks, could you please do a video explaining why the clock in Deriz is broken and stuck in a certain time frame? So we've had this clock on the map Deriz, and as we see in the giant trailer, it's stuck on 115 and then it resets itself. And this has been something that we've seen and known about for a long time. We saw it when they originally released Deriz. We also saw it on the map Kinder der Toten. The clocks are stuck on 115, and it may make you wonder, why is that the case? Well, you might think that it's just an allusion to Element 115. Element 115 is, of course, the element that has created the zombie apocalypse and is responsible for pretty much every wonder weapon and any sort of mysticism or mystery within the zombie storyline. Element 115 is the focal point, and you might think that, well, Treyarch just sort of threw this in as an allusion to the element, and that could very well be the case. They may not have wanted to animate the time constantly moving, so hey, let's just throw it at 115. That'll be a funny, cool little number. Let's see if anybody picks up on it. Well, then we got the release of the giant trailer, and in the giant trailer, we clearly see that the clock is stuck on 115. In fact, Treyarch leaves it in the trailer long enough to show us that the clock is resetting. And in addition to that, it's one of the first few things they show us besides just random images of scenery. So they really want to make a point with this clock, and it's gotten the zombie community to start thinking and discussing this clock again. One of the original theories surrounding the clock was that because time is stuck at 115, that allows the zombies to spawn infinitely. So it's this thought that, well, time happens, the zombies spawn in, well then time resets, so those zombies spawn in again, but time doesn't move the same way we imagine time. Like, not everything resets, only some things. So our characters and history, in a sense, is able to continue to go on, but time in Deriz, at least, is sort of like continuing to loop. And it's also maybe a reference to infinite loops that we've seen throughout the zombie storyline. But the overall idea is that Deriz is maybe in a pocket of time, and because of this pocket of time, the zombies are able to spawn infinitely. But maybe people can enter these pockets of time and be independent from the repeat of time. They're able to progress through time like you and I are, but the objects that belong in this world are constantly stuck in that loop. And so say something like a weapon that was displaced by element 115, because it doesn't technically belong, isn't constantly being reset, but say the zombies who were there originally are constantly being spawned in and reset by this looping of time, thus the zombies are infinite. That was at least just one theory that was going on with the looping of zombies, and now that we see it in the giant trailer, it's going to be entering the forefront of many zombie theories, and that's the basic idea behind it. Deriz is stuck in its own little pocket of time, and it allows for things to be infinite in the world of zombies. Now, this theory isn't perfect. This theory has many flaws, but it's the best we've got at the moment. And it's hard to really say for sure why the clock is stuck at 115, other than maybe it was just a cool little Easter egg from Treyarch. Moving on, we have a question from Evolving Gamer who asks, hey John, what does Nikolai mean when he says a great evil approaches in the giant trailer? So, they're trying to get Richtofen to open the door. They're baiting him into doing it. They're saying he won't be able to comprehend the power on the other side. A great evil approaches. And you have to remember that Richtofen is a power-hungry maniac, so they're trying to bait him into opening the door. Otherwise, they wouldn't be saying these kinds of things. Once he opens the door, though, his past self from Origins opens up the door and shoots himself. Now, our characters weren't aware of that. They're a step behind the Origins Richtofen. The Origins Richtofen he's running his own show. He has his own plan, and he's not telling our characters what that is. So when he says a great evil approaches, he can't be referring to Richtofen within the teleporter because they don't know Richtofen is going to shoot him. What I assume he's referring to is the chain of events that happens when he opens that door. The zombie apocalypse and the world end up being destroyed with our characters stranded on the moon. This is the great evil, the psychopathic Richtofen that takes them on this ridiculous adventure, the one that they're trying to stop. They're referring to himself, but they don't really tell him that. They don't tell him who he's referring to or what this great evil is. They just know that he's power hungry and something like this would interest him, thus he is going to open the door. So they're really just trying to bait him and trick him into opening the door, and the great evil is Richtofen himself that they're referring to. We're going to end today's episode with a question from Project Sorax, who asks, do you think we'll ever get a map about Peter McCain or some kind of factual backstory of him? Love your vids, by the way. So, Peter McCain already has a couple maps about him, or at least you can make the argument that Baruch as well as Shinonuma are fairly important in terms of Peter McCain's story, and in those maps he is a secondary character. Now, he's never really the main star of the map, like he doesn't have an Easter egg dedicated to him, but we learn a bit about him in Baruch, Shinonuma, as well as the Black Ops 1 terminal. Peter was an American spy who was sent to infiltrate Group 935 and learn about what they're doing, and then he eventually got transferred to the Baruch facility. And as we learned through the Black Ops 1 terminal, they started to believe that his cover was compromised, and they were starting to suspect that he was a spy. In fact, Richtofen had made remarks about him before, so they started to catch on to what Peter was doing, and then the Americans got worried, so they sent in a task team to try to get him out. Now, once they get there, they soon realize that he was evacuated, or they left the Baruch facility, and this was because the zombies had taken over, and eventually he worked his way over to Shinonuma, where he met his demise by hanging himself. Now, what led him to hang himself is a little bit unknown. Possibly it may have been that they figured out who he was and he didn't want to end up like some test subject, so he killed himself. It's hard to say for sure, but either way, he gets to Shinonuma and he hangs himself, and that's the end of his story. He also loses his hand as they try to escape the Baruch facility, so he shuts off the power, and in the process his hand gets ripped off. It's stuck to the power switch, and that's why when you turn on the power you see his hand, and then his body hanging in Shinonuma doesn't have a hand. That's what happened there. That's all we really know about Peter McCain. His story has kind of been told. It has a beginning and it has an end. He's no longer really relevant to the story in terms of what's happening now, so there really isn't a need to have a map dedicated to him. Thus, I don't think we'll ever really get one. That's going to wrap things up for this week's episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. If you guys enjoyed the video, maybe give it a like, possibly subscribe. I upload multiple episodes every week, and if you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Once again, you can leave your questions down below, or you can tweet me at JohnnyJ25, and while you're there, maybe give me a follow. Twitter is one of the best ways to get in touch with me, and I'm always checking it. I'm going to go. Have a great day, and